So we are about a minute in, so I'll go ahead and get started. My name's Tim. I'm one of the CodePath co-founders. Really great to meet you. I started CodePath about 8 years ago. So let's see. I want to get some good crowd response. So in the chat, can we blow up the chat? Can we just say hi in the chat? Maybe say where you're from. I want to see if we can break the Zoom chat. Just let's see if we can really crush their servers here. So I'm going to poll you every so often. I'm going to just make sure that I'm not talking to myself. So we'll just really get some chatter going on. I was in your position about 20 years or so ago. I was studying for this process. It's the same test. That's the cool thing. They haven't changed this test in 50 years. It's the same problems. And so I was going through it. And I remember being in your position. I remember, man, I don't know about you. I don't know where you are in your school days, but I was ready for school to be done. I was done with homework. I was done with tests. I was ready to get in the real world. And I will tell you, the real world of tech is as sweet as they say. I think it's one of the best industries out there. I don't know if Caren, you agree. They trust us more than any other industry. You can float in whenever you want to. You can take a 3 hour, as long as you're getting your stuff done. It has the most amount of freedom. You can move around more than any other industry that you have. There's so many tech spaces. There's so many. You can go to little companies. You can go to big companies. I went a route that I love, which is you'll reach forks in the road in the next 10 years about whether you want to go into management, which is a big fork. Caren, you think about going into management, or you hate it, right? A lot of people actually hate it. Once you start to taste it, you're like, oh, that sucks. The other route that's going to be open to you is entrepreneurship. That's a really cool one. You can do a side gig and make some money. You can do it for real and start a company. That's the route that I went down. I loved it. So our mission at CodePath is to help you get there, help you cross over into that. Maybe what you're thinking is, well, I don't know what to do yet. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate. Maybe you're thinking about, well, maybe there's some self-doubt, like, can I succeed in this? Like, I think I can, but maybe there's some element of doubt in there. So I think that the goal that I want to focus you on is, because you don't know what you want yet. The world is so vast. That's the beauty of where you are right now. What you really want, though, is you want choice. You want the ability to do, if you want to work for Google, to work for Google. If you want to work for a startup, to work for a startup. If you want a remote gig, to work on a remote gig. If you want to do contract work, to do contract work. So your primary goal, in my opinion, is to position yourself, put yourself in the position where you can have that choice. So let me explain why I'm saying this. Because right now you're split right now between 3 goals. 1, should I invest in learning more technologies? Web development, cloud, Android, whatever it is, data science. Should you invest in learning? Your second choice is, should you invest in your current internship? Oh, how much time should I invest in my daily internship? And your third choice is, should I invest in this interview prep stuff? So the answer to that question is, they have different values. In my opinion, by far, of course, the most fun is practicing these technologies. And that prepares you for on the job, and also it's the most fun, right? And there's no question that building is, I think, the most fun. So that's valuable, right? But it doesn't necessarily give you choice. It's just fun, and it's a mastery journey. The second thing you could choose to focus on is your internship. So that's useful. You need to learn the ropes of professional, shipping, and it's different from student, projects. But that also, it does help, right? If you get, once Caren's been stamped with this Google job, she can now go everywhere. It's on the resume. It's stamped. It's kind of, sorry to keep on putting you on the spot, Caren, but it's kind of like it's like a game, right? Life is a game. Every time you beat a boss level, it really unlocks more boss levels on top of that, right? But for when it comes to choice, interview prep is the most powerful master key there is. So that's, I think you maybe already know this. Half companies still use interview questions as their gatekeeper, right? And not only is it relevant now, but it's relevant for the next 15 years. Today, Keep on hammering on Caren. If Caren goes over and wants to accept a job at Facebook or Apple or Microsoft, they'll still run her through the ringer of these questions. Can you believe it? Even this many years later, senior engineer at Google, went to Berkeley, she'll still put her through her paces on this thing. So this is just something that if you have in your back pocket, it sucks to practice because it depends if you like this material or not, but it's a master key. It is the most powerful investment that you can make to give yourself career choice. And I want to ask you a quick question, which is, do you think it matters? Yes or no question in the chat. Do you think it matters where you went to school? Wow. Oh, you guys are already on the no. I see yeses and nos. Yeses and nos are right yes, if you went to one of those top schools, it's also a type of key, right? So it's like a game, right? It's like, okay, that kind of opens doors. But if I went to MIT and I bombed this algorithm interview, I still won't get the job. The flip is true, though. If I went to some community college that no one's ever heard of and you crush on this thing, they don't care about that. I promise you, that's the culture right now in engineering. So this is that key. It trumps GPA. Anyone here have less than a 3.0 GPA? Doesn't matter if you crush this, right? So your mission in this life as a game, because you want choice, is you got to get an internship. You must get an internship, right? If you graduate without an internship, it's going to be super challenging. Every internship you get is going to unlock higher levels of internship and more choice. I was talking to a student and, he was like, oh, I don't want to get an internship just to get an internship. And I'm like, dude, that's not the way to think about it. You need to get your first internship. It unlocks the option to get you your dream internship. And look, hold on, if you graduated and you have no internship, you can still make it in life, right? But it's just harder. It's like, because as Caren will tell you, once you're on the easy path in life, if Caren put out her resume today, she'd have 10 offers in the next week. Once you're on easy street in life, it just gets easier and easier and easier. So you wanna get on that road. So you can still succeed if you graduate, you don't have the internship, but we're just trying to put you on easy street. That's all it is. All right, so I'm hoping that I motivated you to focus on this class and its value to you. I'm going to close with a final tip. This is something from Atomic Habits, one of my all-time favorite productivity books. So it is there's this thing, right? This is just like a fitness program. We all know what it takes to get in shape. We all know what it takes to lose weight. You have to do diet and exercise. And this interview prep is the same thing. You just got to do this program for 12 grueling weeks, 2 sessions a week, 4 hours of prep. It's just, you put in that time. Anyone here want to work at those top companies? The top 20% of the class, you'll be able to scoot through those interviews if you can get to that level by the end of the class. Okay, so here's the tip from Atomic Habits. It says that if you want to set yourself up for success, choose the time that you're going to practice. Get ready to write it down. So I'll give you an example. Some people in this class, they choose to practice maybe an hour before the session. Some people say, I'm going to do it Saturday afternoon. You have to pick a ritual, pick a time, and then you write it. You have to write it in the chat. And then just say that's what I'm going to do one problem at lunch every day, or I'm going to first thing in the morning for 15 minutes I'll work on a problem, or every Wednesday at lunch. Pick a time that works for you. Write it down in the chat and hit enter. I don't know. It's a study. They claim that if you do that, you'll actually you have a higher probability of doing it. So we'll see. We'll see if it works for you. But this is, do something realistic as you can. Cool. And I'll turn it over. Morgan, are you in the room yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. So Dobbs lady has arrived. She'll now.
I regret ever saying that because now people call me that. Oh, okay. You handed it off. All right.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Morgan, awesome head of our career center. She knows every recruiter in the land and can help you navigate all kinds of options here.
Awesome. I was like, that's my introduction. I'm the jobs lady.
Sorry. I thought that was a pretty powerful introduction, but
No, it's a good one. It's a good one. All right. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Awesome. Let me present. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking briefly about the CodePath Career Center, the services that we have available for you outside of classroom time, and you know what we have planned for you all for the summer. So just to get started, introduce myself. I'm Morgan Richardson. I'm the head of student career services here at CodePath. My objective is to help every student ideally have at least one internship during their undergrad period, or if you're a master's student, one internship while you're completing your master's or PhD, and hopefully to help ensure that you have a job upon graduation. My second objective is to provide you with the resources to get you there. So that includes interview practice, resume reviews, mentorship, career fairs, networking, and access to the larger CodePath community. In the CodePath community, we have over 10,000 student alumni and an additional, I think, 5,000 to 7,000 professional alumni. So it's a large community, and my job is to make sure that you get everything that you can out of the CodePath Career Center. When you're working with me or my team, I want you all to know what my values are. My values are respect, integrity, kindness, and empathy. So I will always do my best to demonstrate those values to you, and you do your best to demonstrate those values to me. So I'll just put that out there. I want us to have an awesome experience together this summer. All right, so what is the Career Center? So the Career Center is where you can come for all of the services and resources that you see on the screen. So our resources include resource guides. We have amazing resource guides that were written by our co-founder, Nathan. Some of them were written by myself that can help you with finding career paths, how to practice for interviews, how to negotiate salaries, how to network, how to update your resume, etc. All of that is on our website. Other services that we have a mentoring program. So if you want more mentorship in addition to what you're going to get this summer, that mentoring program runs year round, and it's an opportunity for you to connect with engineers and other tech professionals for mentorship for a semester. I think we have 350 mentors that are currently on that platform that are really ready and waiting for you if you are seeking help with, career advice. Do you need a cheerleader? Do you want to do even more interview practice in addition to this? You can do that in the mentoring program. We also host behavioral interview sessions. So a lot of students, when they think about interviews, they think about leak code, data structure, and algorithms, and that's a huge part of it. But you also need to have strong communication skills. You need to be able to talk about your projects and your work experience. You need to be able to convey technical topics to non-technical audiences. Oftentimes when you're talking to a recruiter, they have no engineering experience. So if you're just throwing a bunch of database names and acronyms at them, they may not know in depth what you're talking about. So we provide you with opportunities to practice those skills. In addition to that, we host resume review sessions and workshops. We also host technical interview practice sessions. So if you want to do an hour-long technical interview with an engineer that's kind of simulating the real-world experience of doing a technical interview, we have that opportunity for you. And then finally, we host virtual tech talks from engineers or other tech professionals, as well as our company partners, where they'll come together to talk to you all about various topics in technology. So we've had tech talks on everything, machine learning, navigating the visa process if you're an international student, how to work remotely, on and on and on. There are 4 technical panels that are baked into this summer program. So you'll already have access to those events as part of your class time. All right, so what does the Career Center have planned for you for this summer? So we have 4 main events that we'll be running this summer with the students who are in this class. The first one that we'll have coming up is behavioral interview practice. That's going to happen in 2 weeks. We're going to open registration next week. After that, we're going to have technical interview practice sessions in July. So we want to have, you all have 6 or 7 weeks of class time, start really learning the skills that Caren and other instructors are going to be teaching you. And then we'll create an opportunity for you to practice those skills with engineers who are going to give you personalized feedback on your progress so far. Then after that, we're going to have resume reviews. So I think about 50% of our students this summer are completing internships. So we want to give you an opportunity to update your resumes, put all that new experience that you have, so that you're ready to use that resume when you go into the job search for this fall or next spring. And then after the course ends, first week of September, we're going to have our virtual career fair, which is our flagship event where we connect students with companies that hire talent from CodePath. Updates about all of these events are going to be shared directly to you in 2 ways. They're going to be shared in the Slack channel that's called Virtual Career Fair September 2021. And they're going to be shared directly to you via email. So the email address that you used to sign up for this class and that you receive any course updates about admissions or attendance or grades, we're going to be sending out the updates to that same email address. So you'll get everything there. So something that already has started to get a lot of buzz is the virtual career fair. So I wanted to address some kind of high level questions about that. Day one. So the virtual career fair, like I said, is where CodePath students get to meet with companies that have partnered with CodePath for recruiting. Companies are typically hiring candidates for internships and then entry-level positions in software engineering. The next career fair is going to take place September 1st through 3rd. Which I think is a Wednesday through Friday. At the career fair, you're going to be meeting with companies that you've been paired with to talk to the recruiters or the company reps in a one-to-one conversation or a small group chat, depending on what the company has signed up to do. To have access to the virtual career fair, you need to complete all 12 weeks of the technical interview prep program in the intermediate or advanced level. However, participation in the career fair is not mandatory. So if you have an amazing summer at the company you're already with and you take a return offer from them, that's amazing. Or if you have other career plans, you're planning to go to grad school, that's also amazing. If you're taking time off to go travel around Spain and Europe, also amazing. You don't have to participate. And then the last thing I'll say, so in the course portal where you see all of your assignments and materials for each week, we also have a tab on the left column that's called Virtual Career Fair FAQ. And you can look at that document for any information about the career fair. And this document will be updated continuously throughout the summer. So as we have more information to share with you, it's all going to be there. So that's always the first place that you should look if you have any questions that arise about the career fair. I just wanted to showcase quickly a snapshot of some of our company partners so you can get an idea of what types of companies will be at the fair. These companies here have all participated in a CodePath career fair before, or they have already signed up to participate in the one in September, or a combination of both. So just to give you a sneak peek of who you should expect. All right, so just to review, this is a quick timeline, and I will send out this presentation in the Slack channel and via email so you can read it in great detail in your own time. But just to remind you, so we have 3 events this summer before the career fair where you can practice behavioral interviews, technical interviews, and get your resume updated. We're going to start admitting students to the career fair in July. In August, that's going to be the last date that companies have to sign up. So after that date, you'll have the full list of the companies who are participating. The event's going to happen in September. And then after the event, we'll start collecting feedback from you about how it went, how many offers did you get, all of that good stuff, starting in mid-October, going through to the end of the year. If you have questions about the career fair, any of the events that we're running this summer, anything related to the Career Center, please send us an email at vcf@codepath.org. The reason we're doing this is because across all of the different sections of technical interview prep, there's about 1,400 students, and I have a team of 3 people. So if you flood our Slack DMs with messages, we're just not going to be able to handle that. So please, if you have questions about anything Career Center related, please send that to vcf@codepath.org. If you have questions about the class, I cannot help you with that. So I've already started receiving emails, Slack messages on LinkedIn about the technical interview prep course. So that's not my area of expertise. If you have questions related to the class, admission policies, attendance, the right Zoom links, the class schedules, its assignment deadlines, anything related to the class, please post that in your SE102-S help Slack channel. So that channel is specifically there for you to ask questions about the class. If you send that question to me, I'm going to give you a shrug emoji. I'm like, I don't know. So make sure you're asking the right questions to the right people. All right, so that is, I think I've probably already gone over time. So thank you very much for listening. That is my time, and I look forward to getting to meet you all and supporting you all in achieving your career goals this summer.
Thank you,
Thanks, Morgan.
You're very welcome. Back to you, Karen.
I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, and I'm just starting to realize there's like more than 300 people in this class, right? And this is our first time with so many students in this class. As you're asking these questions to the chat, it's very easy for us to lose what questions you've asked in the chat. So if you have a question about the career fair, the class, I think the best place to put it would be in our Slack channel, the SE102-S1 help channel that Morgan mentioned a little bit earlier. So I saw some questions about, hey, how do we qualify for the career fair? Is everybody automatically enrolled? It's going to be really hard for us to monitor these questions because this chat with 300 people is going a bit haywire, right? So if you have questions, feel free to put it in our SE102-S1 help channel. And I'm going to monitor that every now and then just to see what questions are in there. And if I don't get to a question during lecture, I'll try to go back inside that Slack channel to answer it through Slack. Does that kind of make sense for everybody? This is our first time with so many people. So now this is going to be a learning process. This is our first week. It's always a bit bumpy the first time. So we'll get through it together. All right. Well, now that Morgan and Tim has hyped up everything so much, I feel like everything I talk about is just going to be really boring. But like I said, if you have questions, feel free to either type it in the Zoom chat or feel free to ask it in the Slack chat. I'm going to be periodically looking at the Zoom chat and also the Slack chat to try to answer any questions as we're going along. But other than that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. How are y'all feeling after those awesome 25 minutes of pep talk? Excited? Nervous? Scared?
Excited.
Pumped? All right, so we have about an hour and a half together for this first class. This first class is always the most exciting one. Usually runs over, but the great thing is these sessions are recorded. We're going to upload them on YouTube after class a day or two later, so you're not going to miss anything. I'm going to post the slides on our course portal as well, so you can revisit the slides, you can rewatch these recordings on YouTube. Don't worry about missing a thing if you have to leave at 8. Don't worry about missing a thing if you had to go grab a drink of water or something like that. All right, so our agenda for today, we're going to do a bit of intros, which Tim and Morgan already kicked us off with. I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think it's important for us to be studying programming problems this summer. We're going to go through some goals we have for the summer. I know Tim already kicked us off a little bit about, hey, what is your set agenda for when you're going to study this summer? And then we're going to try our first breakout sessions. How many of you have already used Zoom breakout rooms and are familiar with it? You could type in the chat, yes, I've already used Zoom breakouts. I'm a master at it. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, okay. So before this pandemic, nobody was really doing virtual classes, right? So everybody was kind of confused about breakout sessions. But I see now that everybody is really well-versed in breakout sessions. So maybe this will just go really smoothly, which will be awesome. And then my clickbait, YouTube, I always have this YouTube idea in my mind, which is top 5 coding interview mistakes and how to avoid them. So I'm going to save that for last. And then I'm always going to try to save some time at the end of class to answer any questions you may have. It could be about this class. It could be about, hey, what's it like working at Google? What's it like working at a startup? How did you prepare for getting a tech job? What was your first tech job interview experience like? How did you go about negotiating salary? So I'm always going to save some time at the end of class to let you just ask any questions. And I could talk for forever. So as long as you have questions coming, I'm going to be here answering them. So don't worry about it if you have all these questions and I don't get to it. I'll get to them eventually. All right. So starting off with a little bit of intros. These are the 4 instructors we have for this class. I'm not sure if any of them are here right now. The first one is me. I'm Caren. So I'm currently working at Google as an Android engineer. And I actually got started in Android also by taking my first CodePath Android course. And then eventually, I think in 2018, we started hosting these interview prep courses, and I started teaching that. And this was all before I joined Google. But I think preparing for these interview prep courses and helping teach these interview prep courses has also helped me prepare for getting a job at Google. So that's me. I don't know if Paulina, Shushma, or Jayashri is here. Anybody else here? I'm going to look through the participants really quickly. I think I saw Noel here, who is one of the other instructors for the other course. Noel, did you want to maybe say a bit? Say hi. You know, are you able to unmute yourself?
Sure. Oh, hi. Nice to meet you all. Yeah, I'm one of the instructors for the other course, but I just thought I'd pop in and see how this one's going. So nice to meet everyone.
Noel also interned at Google when he was an undergrad, and then he worked at Google full-time afterwards. But now he's back in the education world, doing a lot more intense stuff than what I do at Google as an engineer. So Noah is unfortunately teaching another class, but he's just as awesome, and he's teaching the same materials. So as you all know, we're doing the same exact class at another time. So what we're doing right now, I'm going to be doing again tomorrow at an East Coast friendly time. So that's what's going on there. All right, so that's a little about us. You'll meet everybody as the weeks go on. I'm mostly going to be teaching about linked lists. Paulina is going to teach about hash maps and trees. Shushma is also going to teach you about trees. It's going to be awesome. You're going to learn everything. We're going to ace these interviews together. All right, so I kind of wanted to start talking about, hey, why are we studying these programming problems, right? I think the most common thing I hear from people trying to prep for these interviews is, why are we studying these problems that, one, you don't use at your job, and two, isn't this just a game that I'm trying to play to get a job? Well, yes, it is a game that you're trying to play to get a job. And if you don't want to play the game, nobody is forcing you, right? So something to always admit is coding interviews are difficult. I don't want to just say that, hey, these are really easy. Everybody should be able to do them. You should spend an hour a day and you'll eventually be able to ace these interviews. That's not the case at all. These coding interviews are difficult, and they're difficult by design. Because if there was easy, then everybody would be able to get a job at a top tech company and earn a great salary, right? So these are difficult by design. And as we're going through the summer, you might be like, this is really hard. Is it just me, or is everybody else going through this process? Am I even meant to be studying these interview problems? And the answer is yes. These are difficult by design. And if it seems like everybody else is having an easy time, I'm 100% sure they're just hiding it. There's probably 5% of people who are really smart and can do these just off the back of their hands. But I personally spent, I think, 3 hours every day after work for almost a whole year trying to prep for my Google interview. So that's just me. I'm not that smart. I take a long time to learn something. So coding interviews are difficult by default. I don't want to just go out there and say, hey, everybody is going to get this just by trying it once. You're going to have to work really hard to get through it. Second thing that I want to bring up is, like most things in life, luck plays a big factor, right? So you might go into an interview and an interviewer asks you a question that you just practiced yesterday. And you're like, yes, I just practiced this exact question yesterday. I know exactly how to do these. I know 3 different ways to do this. I know how to explain it like the back of my hand. Or you might go into an interview and the interviewer gives you like a binary tree problem. You're like, those are the problems I hate the most. Why did I have to get this binary tree problem, right? So luck really plays a huge factor in all these interviews. In fact, I think if you ask most engineers at Google right now if they think they can get into Google again if they interviewed, 50% of them think they can't, because luck plays such a big factor on which interviewers you get and which questions you get. How many people have felt like this before? You're just like, why did I get this question? This is the one question I wish I didn't get. Yeah, see, it happens to everybody. Luck is such a huge factor. But on the same time, sometimes I get a question, I'm like, yes, this is the one question I know so well. I'm so glad I got this question. But one of my favorite quotes is, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? So we are trying to prepare you for all these different scenarios that you're going to be able to see in these technical interviews. And we're trying to give you these different opportunities. So we're really trying to help you create your own luck in this job hunting process. We're trying to say, hey, we're going to give you a virtual career fair. We're going to let you talk to some companies. And we're also going to prepare you. We're going to help you prepare to ace these interviews. So there's no such thing in luck in my head. Luck is just when preparation meets opportunity. And if you prepare hard enough this summer and we give you the opportunities, I really think everybody could walk away successful. So this is just my little pep talk. I know you've had like 3 pep talks already, so hopefully that wasn't too much. But jumping into the goals for the course for this summer. So 1, we want to help everybody be able to go into phone screens with confidence. And when I say phone screens, it's mostly because this is the intermediate course, right? We also have the advanced course where we're going through a lot of different other topics such as graphs and dynamic programming. So we're not going to be over graphs and dynamic programming in this class. And that's why we're saying, hey, we want you to be able to go into almost all phone screens with confidence. Phone screen questions are most of the times easier than on-site questions. And we think that if you put in the work for this course right now, you should be able to, say, hey, I'm going to have a phone screen with this tech company soon, and I think I'm going to be able to ace it. The big thing around this is that, hey, most questions follow the same pattern. I know you go on LeetCode and you see like 2,000, 3,000 questions, and you're like, there's no way I could do all these questions. So the key to all these questions is that really there's only about 20 to 30 different kind of problems. Most of these problems are going to follow the same pattern. And once you start to recognize the patterns that these questions have and how to solve them with these different tips and tricks that we're going to teach you, you're going to be like, oh, this question is just like this question. I'm going to solve it in basically the same way. The big key, like Tim said before with Atomic Habits, is repeated practice. So you really have to put in the time every day, every week to practice on these problems. So this is more of a marathon than a sprint. I know everybody's really excited these first few weeks and you're like, I'm going to do 10 LeetCode problems a day. I guarantee you, everybody, by week 5 and 6, you're just going to be really tired. You're going to be like, it's July 4th. Why am I doing LeetCode problems when everybody else is out in the sun having fun? It's a marathon and not a sprint is what I want to remind everybody. So key is repeated practice. Hopefully you wrote down your goal when Tim was like, hey, what is your goal for practicing every day? When are you going to practice every day? The second thing we want to help you do is learn more about the tech industry, right? I don't know about you all, but when I was in college, I literally had no idea what the tech industry was like. I didn't have any friends that was in the tech industry. I didn't have any family members that were already working in the tech industry. I was just like, oh, programming is cool. I could write cool little computer programs to say hello world. I had no idea what I could do as a programmer. I didn't know that people don't just sit at their computers 8 hours a day programming. So a big part of this course is also helping you learn about the tech industry. The last one is, this is a 12-week course, right? But these interview preparations, it's more of a long game. So we want to help you to prepare for actually continuing to studying and practicing after the course ends. So the idea is that we're going to give you all the tools, give you all the strategies that we think are necessary for practicing effectively. And hopefully by the end of the course, you continue to study and practice and continue working towards your goal of making that dream company. Okay, I'm going to stop talking for a bit because I've been talking for like 10 minutes straight. We'll get the questions in the Zoom chat really fast and see what kind of questions people have had. Oh, great. So if you see Pat in our help channel answering questions, Pat is the lead for all these operations. So she's already helping answering a lot of the questions in the Slack chat about the virtual career fair that I see some people have asked. I'm going to address some other common questions people have had, which was, hey, can I switch to another section? No, this section is where you're in. If you want to switch, now is not the time anymore. You're stuck in this section. Second one is, can I audit the advanced course? We're going to let people look at the materials for the advanced course after the summer ends, if you want to do that. So those are 2 top questions I think I've gotten so far. Yep, I just answered Cam's question. Do we have access to other courses to survey? You can gain access to it after the summer ends. There's some more general questions like, do companies like Google prefer master degrees? Short answer is no. I don't think they have a strong preference to masters. But a lot of these like more general questions, I think I'm going to save towards the end so we could get through the content that was planned for the day. And then I'm going to save all the time in the end for all your questions. This course, we're only going to support Java and Python. So every week, you're going to have to take a HackerRank assessment. And the HackerRank assessments, unfortunately, only support Java and Python. So you're going to have to complete those questions in Java and Python. All right, I'm gonna move on unless there are any other burning questions. If you ever are like, hey, I can't see your screen, please flood the chat, or you're like, hey, we can't hear you, or you're froze, flood the chat. All right, so we talked about our goals for this course, right? Now let's talk about how we're gonna work towards the goals. So one, we're gonna have lectures to reinforce concepts and walk through techniques. So going back to how you're actually gonna learn the content, all the instructors are gonna go through actual practice problems. We're gonna walk through a practice problems together so you can see how we would approach it in an interview setting. We're gonna talk about, hey, every time you get a stream problem, think about these 3 techniques and tips and tricks that you could possibly use to solve it. So we're gonna have a lot of lectures. We're gonna reinforce these concepts so that you start recognizing patterns in these problems. And then a lot of time is gonna be actually you spending time with your pod to actually practice these problems. Because we could talk for as long as we want, right? But none of this is gonna be effective until you actually try it yourself. I don't know how many YouTube videos I watched of people actually solving problems, but when I go and actually try it on LeetCode, if I haven't tried it before and I watch a bunch of YouTube videos, I still get really stumped. So the key is actually to try doing yourselves and getting stuck yourselves before you actually learn the problem well. We also have a lot of extra practice problems or review materials to kind of help you fill these potential gaps. So if you feel like you don't get a specific topic like linked list really well, feel free to go in and look at the practice problems and the review materials. And lastly, we have these weekly HackerRank assessments, and everybody's always asking, hey, what do these HackerRank assessments count as? The biggest thing that these HackerRank assessments are for you to kind of get a picture of how well you're doing in the class and how well you're understanding the materials. So if you're like not doing so well on a HackerRank assessment, that's a sign that maybe you should go back and look at some extra practice problems and review much more materials to, get a better grasp of binary trees or linked lists, for example. How important is the score? It's not that important. It's a little bit important in that we do kind of look at it to see how well what kind of companies we can match you with in the virtual career fair, but it plays a very, very small role in how we match you to companies. So they're kind of important, but they're also not the end of the world. Like, for example, if you totally bomb one HackerRank assessment, it's not going to be a big factor in anything at all. If you bomb like every single week, you're getting like zeros on every single week, that could be a problem. Any other questions about any of this so far? So the big thing to take away is don't worry too much about your HackerRank assessment scores, but do worry if you're getting below like 30% every week. That's when you just start worrying. Otherwise, don't stress out too much about the HackerRank assessment scores. And lastly, we do have a lot of mentors and fellow classmates and instructors. We're always here. I'm always going to be on Slack. If you have questions for anything, concerns about anything, feel free to ping me on Slack. I saw a bunch of more questions come into the Zoom chat, so I'm going to look at that really quick. Can we challenge ourselves to solve challenges in both Java and Python? Yeah, if you want to, go for it. I personally only do stuff in Java, and some people are like, why would you do that? That's so much more work. I agree. I wish I knew Python better. A lot of people are like, what are we missing out in the beginner track? Honestly, if you're in this track, you're not missing out on anything in the beginner track. We basically cover everything in the beginner track, but much faster, and then we cover more topics. All right, I'm going to move on. I know I skipped some questions, but if I didn't answer a question, feel free to save it till the end. All right, so now that we talked a little about goals for the class, how we're going to work those goals, I want everybody to kind of take a moment and think about your personal goals for the next 12 weeks. It could be, hey, I just want to spend 1 hour every day doing legal problems. Or it could be, hey, I want to do at least 2 legal problems a day. Or it could just be, hey, I just want to get to this class. I just want to go to every lecture, do all the assignments, not flunk out, be able to do the HackerRank assessments. Or it could be, hey, I want to make 5 new friends with my pod members and talk to at least 3 different industry mentors so that I gain a better network. So take a moment to think about what your personal goal is for the next 12 weeks. And once you have that goal, feel free to type in the chat. I'm super interested to see what kind of goals people have for themselves. Feel more confident. That's my favorite one. Really, at the end of the day, it's really just about how good you feel as you're going through an interview, right? Ooh, learn Rust. Rust is a hip new language that I learned a bit of. That's a cool one. Improve coding skills. More confident answering technical interviews. destroy my imposter syndrome. I sadly have not accomplished that yet. I still have imposter syndrome. I feel a little nervous talking to everybody right now. Like, why is 300 people listening to me talk for 2 hours, right? 2 hours of practice every day. Make friends. Get an interview and crush it. Love it. Love it all. So as you're going through these 12 weeks, hopefully you keep this goal in mind. And I guarantee you 6 weeks, 8 weeks from now, it's gonna be a Saturday morning and you're gonna be thinking to yourself, why am I doing this to myself on a Saturday? Why am I studying coding problems on a Saturday morning? And you want to think back to your goal and think back to that awesome tech job that you're going to be able to get, or whatever it is that your goal was, and just not give up. So don't stop coming to class. I think the biggest thing that people find hard about this class is just the continuing of coming to class twice a week and doing the extra practice problems. So hopefully you think about your goal as you're thinking about, oh, why is this so hard? Why am I doing this? Just think back to your goal. All right, so quick expectations. There's not too much. We just expect you to attend these weekly sessions, Tuesdays and Saturdays. You get 3 excused absences. Once you do more than 3, you don't qualify for the virtual career fair anymore. You could miss 3 classes and still be part of the virtual career fair. Complete the weekly HackerRank test. It's going to be in the course portal every week. And maybe do some extra reading and practice problems, totally optional. So basically just come to class, complete weekly HackerRank problems. Don't be a jerk to anybody. So the course portal, if you don't know already, every time I refer to the course portal, I'm basically talking about this page. So hopefully everybody knows what I'm talking about. That's the link to the course portal, and you want to basically just bookmark it right now. We're going to be in here like every single week for every session, and all your resources are going to be here. This is where we're going to post solutions. This is where we're going to post lecture slides. So everything is going to be in here. If you haven't already, bookmark this page. Overview page is where you can see, hey, this is what we're working on for this week. So for example, week 1, we're just kind of warming up, getting used to all this all. We're going to learn about this magical thing called the umpire method. And then for each session, so session 1s are on Tuesdays and session 2s are on Saturdays. So every time we're in session, you want to make sure you're in the right tab in the course portal, because that's where you're going to find out what you're going to be doing in breakout rooms. So if you're ever lost in like, what are we doing in breakout rooms? Go to the course portal, go to the session tab, all the instructions will be there. The assignment is where you can find the HackerRank link. So every week, remember, you have to do this HackerRank and be able to complete it. If you don't complete it for all 12 weeks, you can't be part of the virtual career fair. So assignment tab is where you can find the HackerRank link. The resources are where we're going to post these lecture recordings. So once this lecture is recorded and uploaded to YouTube, we're going to post a link under the resources. Then we're also going to post the slides, and we're going to post links to all the guides. So that was a very fast whirlwind tour of the course portal. If it seems like a lot, that's totally fine. As we're getting through the different weeks, things are going to go a lot smoother. So it's a lot right now. This is all recorded. Don't feel too overwhelmed if you think you missed everything or anything. You could always go back and revisit this later, and we'll get more comfortable with things as the weeks go on. All right, so going on to pods and teams. So I think we ended up putting around 5 to 6 students per pod per team. This is going to be your awesome best friends for the rest of the summer. This is going to be the group you're going to be working on every time we have breakout rooms. So you're going to get really acquainted with each other. If you ever have a question or you're like, hey, how do I do this? Your pod is to go to. If you see someone not coming to class in your pod, you be like, hey, why didn't you come to class today? We missed you. Did you have a problem or are you just skipping out? Always be sure to check up on your pod members, see how they're doing. Each pod and team also has a mentor. So right now, I think some people have already done it. You already pre-pended your number, your pod number to your name. And this is so that we could put you in the right breakout rooms in case anything goes wrong. So right now, if you haven't already, take a second to look at what pod number you will have and prepend it to your name. And if you're a mentor, please also do that. You could do like 4. If you're in charge of 2 different groups, you can say, hey, I'm part of this group, and I'm a mentor. So if we haven't done that already, please go ahead and do that. I'm going to literally call out names of people who aren't doing it. Let's see. Allison, Andrew, Anthony. I don't see pod numbers in front of your names. Calvin, Cam, Charles, Dan. Gotta put your pod numbers in front of your names. Enzo, I don't know what your pod number is. Helen. If you don't have your pod number, you're not going to be able to meet your awesome group. All right, so take a second to put your pod numbers in front of your names. Otherwise, you're going to be really sad and lonely hanging out in the main room with me later. Yeah, how do you do it? Can someone explain in the chat how you did it while I keep on talking? I don't actually know if you could do it on the iPad. It might be a desktop thing only. All right, I'm gonna keep going, but hopefully everybody figures this out, because if you don't, you're gonna be sad and lonely and hanging out with me instead of your pod. So we've recruited a bunch of professional engineers from the industry to help you out as mentors this summer. Some of them were even past students from this course, which I think is really cool. So they're going to be there for most of your Saturday sessions to help you through the in-class exercises. Some Saturday sessions, because there are humans who need time off too, they're not going to be there. But they are going to be there for most of your breakout sessions on Saturdays. They're not required to come on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays, you're kind of working on your own. They might come on some Tuesdays, they might not. But Saturdays is when you can mostly expect them. All right, so we're going to do our first in-class exercise. This is going to be a fun one. Nothing too nerve-wracking. The ones we're going to do in later weeks are going to be a little nerve-wracking, but this one's going to be a chill one. So usually in these in-class exercises, we're just going to work on problems together, usually on the topic of the week. So for example, next week is linked lists. So we're going to work on some linked list problems. And this is great practice for phone interviews, right? Because you're talking to someone through a screen, you're working through a technical problem and talking through your thought process. So our first in-class exercise is just going to be a very common exercise. It's an interview question of, hey, tell me a little about yourself. So this is like the most common question that people usually ask to start off an interview, right? I pick up the phone, I call someone, I'm like, hey, is this a good time to chat? And they're like, yeah, this is a good time to chat. I try to get them to talk to me a little bit about something outside of programming to kind of help them not be so nervous. So I would say something like, hey, I'm Caren, I work at Google, this is what I do at Google. Why don't you tell me about yourself? How many people have gotten this question during an interview? Yes, no? Okay, cool. So it's not just me who asks this question. Yeah, so a lot of people are always like, hey, how important is this question? What should I even say during these, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, right? So this is what we're going to practice with your group pod. And this is also a great way for you to meet everybody else in your group pod. All right, so we're all going to go into small groups of pods soon. We're going to go into breakout rooms. You're going to start by having everybody introduce themselves. And since nobody wants to be the first one, start by having everybody introduce themselves in alphabetical order. So starting with the person who has A or B or C. And then you want to take 5 minutes to kind of think about your answer, right? Kind of collect your thoughts, think about what you want to talk about. You kind of want to aim to talk for about 2 to 3 minutes, nothing more than 2 to 3 minutes. Everything I'm saying here is also in the course portal, so you don't have to be like, I have to memorize everything Caren's saying. It's all going to be in the course portal. You can read the exact instructions there. And then you're going to take turns answering this question. So you're just going to practice with your group teammates, get comfortable with each other, and be like, hey, okay, I'm going to tell you a little about myself. You want to jot down notes for everybody else in your pod member to kind of give them feedback. So if you're trying to give other people feedback, how can they improve their little spiel? How can they improve their elevator pitch to you? So if you're not talking, you should be taking notes about how the person who is talking could possibly improve. And then once everybody is done, so I do my little spiel, someone else does their little spiel, go around and kind of give each other feedback. Be like, hey, I really liked how you said this in your little spiel, but I wish you talked more about this, or I wish you talked less about this, or I really didn't need to hear so much about this. So go around, everybody gives their little speech, and then everybody goes around and takes turns getting feedback.
Oh, question.
Yes, question.
Yeah, should our mentor be here or no?
So mentors aren't required to go be here on Tuesdays, but some mentors are here today. So
okay.
They could be here or they won't. They might not be here. I wouldn't wait for your mentors to come into your breakout rooms or anything, though. If that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to start and give an example. All right, I'm going to collect my thoughts, think for a little bit. Someone calls me, they're like, hey, this is a good time. Well, someone's drawing on my screen. Anyway, so they're like, hey, is this a good time to chat? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, hey, tell me a little about yourself. So here's my little spiel. I'm Caren. I went to school at UC Berkeley. I was a computer science major. I took a data structures and algorithms course, and then I took a cybersecurity course. And my favorite course is probably the one about system designs. And I'm really excited about working at Google. It's always been my dream, and I just really want to work at Google. So that's my little spiel. All right, so now it's your turn. Go crazy about what was wrong with what I said. First of all, that was only like 20, 30 seconds. Type in the chat about what you think I did wrong in what I just said. Not enough information. I didn't make good eye contact. I didn't talk about side projects. I didn't talk about why I wanted to work at Google. I didn't talk about how I I just talked about why I wanted to work at Google, but I didn't talk about, you know, why does Google want me to work for them, right? I didn't really talk about me. There was nothing memorable. I didn't talk about why I like the system design course so much. I didn't really talk about anything, really, right? It's kind of a waste of, not a good use of anybody's time. And so some of the common mistakes that people make when they're trying to give their little spiel is, one, not mentioning why you're interested in the role in the company. They're like, it's very easy to get a sense of whether someone is just trying to get a job. And that might be totally fine. You're just trying to get your first tech job, right? Nothing wrong with that. But it'd be great if you can at least mention why you're interested in this specific role or this specific company. For example, if the company specializes in healthcare, talk about why you're so excited to work in a healthcare company. If the company specializes in social network, talk about why you're so excited to work for a social network company. So always mention why you're interested in a specific role and company. That's a good thing to mention. Two, I spend a lot of time talking about things people could have just read off of my resume, right? I talked about my name, I talked about the school I went to, I talked about classes I took. These are all stuff that nobody really cares about when you're actually interviewing for the job, right? They could have read this on your resume. If they didn't, that means they didn't really care about it too much anyway. So talking about things that are already on your resume is just not a good use of time. Also, I could have probably showed a little bit more enthusiasm, but I was like a little nervous, and I was just like, I just want to get my words out. So being more excited and showing that you actually want this job, it might sound like it's not a big deal, but after, as an interviewer, you hear a bunch of people talking about themselves, right? If someone sounds really excited, that kind of gets me excited too. So the more excited you are, the more excited the interviewer gets about you, and the better impression they have of you. So showing some enthusiasm, always good. I didn't really talk too much about the specific company or role I was interviewing for. I was just like, this is Google. I love Google. I really want to work for Google. I didn't talk about, hey, these are the Google products that I think are really cool coming for Google. These are specific reasons why I specifically want to do this role at Google. I just like, Google is really cool. I just want to work for you, right? Not a good way to start. Great things to talk about that some of you already mentioned on some of in the chat was talk about cool focuses or projects that you did from past companies or at school. Like maybe you built a really cool side project. That's a great time to bring it up. Talk a little bit more about what gets you excited. Talk a little bit more about your expertise. Passion projects, always super cool to hear about what people have built on the side. Talk about why you're interested in the company. And specialties are interesting. You could talk about, hey, I'm really interested in Android, or I'm really interested in iOS. And these are the reasons I've built these different apps to kind of play around with the different APIs. Those are all things that can help you stand out from other candidates, right? And even though this specific part of the interview might not count for a lot at all as part of the whole experience, it does give your interviewer a first impression of you. So talking about things that are really exciting for you, getting things on a good start is always a good thing. All right, so I think we're ready for breakout rooms now. We're 10 minutes behind schedule, but we're going to spend about 30 minutes in breakout rooms. So we're going to come back at 7:25 Pacific time. I just talked about a lot of stuff. You probably missed a lot. That's totally fine. I'm talking so fast. There's so much going on. If you miss anything, all the instructions are in the course portal. We're going to meet back here at 7:25. Any questions before we send you into your breakout rooms? This is like a whirlwind. I feel like I've just been talking for an hour. Yes, we will close the breakout rooms automatically at 7:25 and bring everybody back to this main room. So soon you're going to be put into these breakout rooms. You're going to meet your pod members, go through this little exercise, and then we're going to bring everybody back at 7:25. We'll probably give you a warning 5 minutes before so you could wrap up your thoughts. Yes, groups are the same as pods. Sorry, we're using those words interchangeably. Oh, if you have 2 pods, I'm not sure why you would be in 2 pods. Choose one for now, and we'll figure it out later. Yeah, you could do a real one and then do a professional one later, if you have time for that. Pick the order for first or last names based on what you think would work best for your group. Logging in with the wrong Zoom account should not matter. Okay. Yeah, try to pretend like try to think about like a dream company or a dream role that you're actually interviewing for. Don't try to do something big where it's just like you're giving a spiel for something general. Try to go for something specific like, I want to be a software engineer at Pixar working on Toy Story or something like that. Something very specific. a job that you actually want to interview for, practicing for that. My other slide, great things to talk about. Oh, we're going to open breakout rooms automatically right about now, since I think I've answered most questions. And we'll meet back here at 7:25 Pacific time, so in about 30 minutes. All right, I think we're ready for breakout rooms. And this is where the magic happens, and you'll just see a button pop up telling you to join breakout rooms. Okay, welcome back to this main room, everybody. So just wanted to ask, how did it go? Did you think it was cool? Did you learn something new? Did you like your pod members? If you didn't like them, you might not want to say it in the public chat. I realized some pods had like 8 people in it, which is really big. I think the largest pods we had last year were 4 to 5. Yeah, so you're going to be with the same group in all the sessions moving forward. This is your little family for the summer. So if someone is missing, if someone doesn't come to class, be sure to check on them. Be like, hey, did you not come because you're not feeling confident with the materials we're going over? Can I help with it anyway? Do you want to set up a study session? Feel free to set up some study sessions. Like, be like, hey, why don't we all work through the practice problems together? Why don't we do a little bit of review before we take the hacker rank for the week? It'd be really cool if y'all did something weekly, or you had time set aside at the same time every day to go through problems. Set up a Slack channel or email group or a Discord channel or GroupMe group. Figure out a way to communicate with your group members, because these are the people that's going to be your support system for the rest of the summer. All right, well, hopefully you enjoy that. So that's going to be the format we're going to do for every session. Usually the lecture is just going to be 30 minutes. This first session was a little bit longer with the lecture because we had to talk about some administrative stuff. We had to talk a little bit about virtual career fair. But usually we're just going to have 30 minutes of lecture. I'm going to talk about the topic, and then you all are going to go into your groups to work on your pods. If you're like, hey, I hated that, I think the pods really didn't work well because this and this, feel free to Slack me. We're also going to have you complete a survey at the end. You could give us all your feedback about everything you thought, how that went. So if you didn't think the pods worked well because there were too many people, or you felt like someone was dominating the conversation, feel free to tell us that in your survey. I'm going to send out the survey at the very end of class. Do not leave without filling out the survey. That is going to be part of how we're going to take attendance. So if you don't fill out the survey and you just leave, we're going to be like, hey, this person didn't show up for class today. So I'm going to send out a survey later. Make sure you fill it out. It's going to take 1 minute at most. If you want to type a lot of stuff, it could take more time, but don't leave without filling out the survey at the very end. Good question. Is the hacker rank assessment a group activity or individual? The hacker rank assessment is very individual. It's very much like the assessment you took to get into the class. It's timed 90 minutes. There's going to be multiple choice questions, coding questions, debugging questions. You're going to have to take it yourself. There is also like this cheat detector thing. So if you are working with someone directly next to them, copying their code, hacker rank will flag it. Yeah, I'm going to send the link to the survey at the very end of class, just in case you take it and then leave. If you have the exact same code as someone else on HackerRank flags that. All right, so moving on to the last portion of our class today, which is my awesome clickbait YouTube video, the key to acing interviews. I'm sure you're all super interested to say what I have here. So I'm gonna try to debunk a couple of myths that I've been seeing on online Reddit forums or people talking about. The first myth I want to debunk is I have to solve 300 questions on LeetCode and literally memorize solutions in order to be able to be successful in interviews. How many people kind of think this is true? Yes, no, this is something you think you thought you had to, solve all 300, 1,000 questions on LeetCode, memorize the solutions for all of them. Otherwise, you're probably never going to get past a big tech interview. Okay, I'm glad, a lot of you didn't already think this is true. So the reality is that no, you don't have to solve 300 questions. In fact, you probably just have to go through the top 30 to 40 questions, right? A lot of these problems, they could be solved following the same exact patterns and tricks. Like, for example, there's only really 3 different ways to solve a string problem effectively. It's like a sliding window, you sort the strings. So every type of problem, there's really only a couple of different concepts. And once you go through the top 30 or 40 problems, you're going to start to notice these patterns more. So of course, the more problems you solve, the better, right? The more problems you solve, the better you're going to get at pattern recognizing. You're going to realize, oh, this is just like this other problem, and I solved this other problem, using the sliding window approach, or I solved it by sorting the array first. Maybe I could try it with this problem as well. So yes, it is awesome to solve a bunch of problems, get more familiar with different types of questions, but really you just have to get really good at like the top 30 to 40 common problems. And once you know those top questions and then you understand the concept behind them and the patterns, you're gonna get really good at solving all these other problems. So a big part of this class is showing you, hey, what are these top 30 to 40 questions? And trying to help you find these different patterns and come up with these questions. I will say some coding interviews, they throw you a curveball, you get this really hard like programming question that you've never heard about before using these really weird tricks with like bit manipulation. That does come up, so I'm saying you can only be successful about 90% of coding interviews. So that's the first myth. How many questions have I done? That's a good question. I'd say probably 50 to 75 before I felt comfortable. And then after that, I just felt like every other question I did after the first 50 to 75 was really similar to the previous questions. And I didn't feel like I mastered the first 50 to 75. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna get really good at these questions before I do anything else. This is true for new grad interviews, internship interviews, senior software engineer interviews. They basically all ask the same kind of questions. Yes, it is very closely following that blind post. But I also have my own curated list of top questions that I could share out to you all sometime during the course of this, this class. The other myth is I have to solve every problem correctly in the most optimal way and in the fastest time frame in order to pass an interview. So how many people think this is true? Yes, no, maybe, partially, sometimes, kind of. So I think the biggest thing that I see from people who don't end up getting a job interview is like, hey, I was able to go in there, I solved the question, everything, all my test cases passed. I have no idea why I didn't actually get to the next round or get the offer, right? The biggest interview mistakes, one, is not communicating with the interviewer. So yes, you might have solved the problem correctly, you were typing your code, everything worked correctly, but the interviewer had no idea how you came about that solution, right? You were kind of just typing by your own, you weren't telling them, hey, this is the part I'm stuck on, this is the part I'm not sure about, this is the part I'm trying to work out, this is the part that I think needs refactoring or refining. Not communicating with an interviewer is a very big mistake. So if you shouldn't spend more than, I'd say, 5 minutes not talking at all. It's totally okay for you to not talk. You don't have to be talking the whole time. In fact, it could be kind of hard to talk and code at the same time. So sometimes I like to say, hey, I'm gonna take a moment to think about this. I'm just not gonna talk for a bit, I'm gonna think about it. That's totally okay. But if you're just not talking for like 10 minutes and you're just doing your thing on your laptop, that's not the right approach. And you're probably not gonna pass the interview. Second one is jumping to conclusions or solving the wrong problem. So a lot of times I give someone a problem or someone gives me a problem. And the biggest mistake is they think they've already seen this problem. They think they've already solved this problem. So they immediately start writing code. And there's a lot of different things wrong with that. But the biggest one that the interviewer is looking for is, as part of software engineering, they're looking for you to define what problem you're trying to solve, right? So instead of just getting a problem and solving it, they're really looking for you to ask clarifying questions like, hey, is this array always going to be sorted? A lot of times, candidates go down the wrong path and waste like 15 to 20 minutes writing code, solving the wrong problem before the interviewer is like, wait, that's not what we're working on at all. The original problem was this. We're trying to do this and not whatever you're trying to solve for instead. So that wastes a lot of time. So jumping to conclusions, not asking these clarifying questions, that could be really detrimental to the interview. The other big one is a lot of times you're like, okay, I know how to solve this problem. I have a great approach. I'm going to write down the code. I planned it out. Now I'm going to translate to code. Okay, and then you're like, okay, I'm done. This is my solution for this problem. And one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make is they don't go back and actually check their solution to see if, hey, does this actually work? And they don't actually try to give their solution input and see how that input turns into the output based on the solution they write. And so they aren't able to catch their own bugs, and so they're like, hey, I'm done. And so the interviewer is like, okay, they're done. And now they take the solution, they take it to the hiring committee, or they review it later, and they're like, wait, this code doesn't work in this place or this place. This candidate really didn't come up with the right solution in the end, right? So that's another big mistake. A lot of times people also don't think about space and time trade-offs. I think this might not be as big a problem in our intermediate class, but it's always really important to say, hey, I have this solution and I know it's not efficient because it takes some more space, but it is more time efficient. So if we had a really large input, I think my solution would be better and more efficient versus, hey, maybe we want to actually save space because we don't have as much space complexity to work with. So not discussing space and runtime trade-offs is another big problem that people also use. All right, good. My audio seems fine. Great. And I think the biggest one, which is probably, I say 50 to 60% of why people don't pass interviews, is speed. So that just means that the interviewer wasn't able to get a good signal. So for example, a lot of times these interviewers have questions and then follow-up questions and then follow-up questions. So the first question they gave you might just be like a warm-up. And maybe you were able to solve that completely fine, but you took up like the whole 30 minutes trying to solve their warm-up question when they have all these follow-up questions that change the question this way. And so you were like, oh, okay, I was able to complete that, totally fine. I breezed through it. But the problem was the interviewer was really trying to get you to solve these more complicated questions that they're saving after you solve that warm-up question. So really getting fast at this is a key. So it's a lot to go through, and you're trying to remember all these different things you have to do when you're doing these, and you're also trying to do these within the time limit, right? So it's a lot to consider. So I'm just going to pause a bit and see if anybody has questions right now. These are just, I think, some of the interview mistakes that I see and that my friends talk about when they're interviewing people. Biggest one, I think, is speed. People just aren't able to do it in the time frame allowed. How correct should the answers be? It definitely should be correct. Most times it's probably okay if you have like a tiny error here or there, but it should probably be like 95% correct. Yes, the slide deck will be available on the course portal later. Are warm-up questions usually given for on-sites? Yeah, I've had a lot of on-sites where, you know, the question is actually limitless. So there's like, it's like a 10-part question. And the point of the interview is to see how many questions, how many parts of that question I could get through. So these warm-up questions and multiple part questions, I think, is very common. Sometimes it might just be one part, so you never really know. Does language used in interviews ever matter? Usually, I don't think it matters too much, especially for big companies. Big companies don't care as much about language or technologies used. It might matter if you're, you know, interviewing for like an Android or iOS position at a startup and you don't know how to do Swift or Java. That might be a big problem. Oh, this is a really good question. How important is it to get the most optimal solution versus the brute force? So I think another big mistake that I see a lot of people do is they immediately try to go for the optimal solution. They're like, I know there's a log-n solution. I know there's a very brute force way to do it, and it's very inefficient. And I don't want to talk about that because I know that's inefficient, and I want to immediately go to the most efficient solution. So how important is it to get the most optimal solution versus brute force? So I would say that one, if you have nothing, you have no solution, that's an automatic fail. So if you can't come up with the most optimal solution, at least talk about your brute force solution. You might at least be able to pass the interview if you had some kind of solution. But if you had no solution, then you definitely fail the interview, right? So I think the approach to go with here is usually what I like to do is I see a problem and I say, okay, immediately I can think of this brute force way to solve it. And this brute force way to solve it has this time complexity and this space complexity. I'm gonna think about whether I can solve this more efficiently. And then I'll ask the interviewer. It's always a conversation with the interviewer, right? Do you want to see me implement this brute force solution, or should we try to come up with a better, more optimal solution before we start to actually plan and code it out? Okay, there is a lot more questions, but I think I'm going to try to move on and then come back to the questions because I'm going to talk about how to avoid these common interview mistakes. And hopefully that'll answer some of the questions here. But again, I'm not going to leave until I've answered everybody's questions, so don't worry if your question isn't answered right now. All right, so to help you get over, you know, all these common interview mistakes, one of the engineers came up with this framework of thinking, which is the umpire approach. And you probably have never heard of it because this is something someone at COPATH came up with. So this umpire method of thinking and approaching problems is something we're going to practice throughout the summer. And the general idea is that given a problem, you want to follow these 6 steps in order to go about solving. First, you need to understand the problem. That's the U. Then you want to look at this problem and see if there's any other problems similar to this problem and think about whether you can use similar patterns and tips and tricks to solve it. That's the match pattern. Then you actually want to plan for solving this. So notice in the first 3 steps, we haven't written any code at all. We're just trying to understand the problem to make sure we're solving for the right problem. And we're trying to plan for the problem. So we're not writing code and then making everything really messy on a whiteboard where things are really hard to fix. We're trying to plan out what we're actually going to write the code for. And then we actually implement it. So we actually write the code for it. And then we want to go back to our code and review our code, see if actually what we said we were going to write is actually the code we wrote. And then finally, we want to say, okay, this is our final solution. I'm happy with it. This is the time and space complexity. So those, in a very brief gist, is what Empire stands for. And you might be like, that's a lot to remember. I have no idea how I'm going to remember this. That's totally okay, because we're going to be using this Empire framework of thinking throughout 12 weeks. So you're going to know this like the back of your hand. So don't worry if this seems like a lot right now. All right, so we're going to go through each of these step by step really fast. I'm just going to give you a very general overview. And then in the next class, we're actually going to try to use this framework. And throughout these 12 weeks, we're going to be working with this framework literally every single session. So I'm just going to give a very general brief overview right now. So the first step is the understand step. That's basically just asking what the interviewer wants from you with clarifying questions and test cases. So for example, you might have to ask, okay, the example input you gave me is sorted. Is the input always going to be sorted? Can we assume that's always sorted? Is it input guaranteed to satisfy these conditions? Is it always going to be at least as big? Do we know that it's always going to contain these type of objects? Those kind of questions are always good to ask to make sure you're solving for the right problem. And then another really good thing to do is make sure you understand the problem and you and the interviewer are on the right track. So with this problem that we have, if we give it this input, is this the output we would expect? And this might seem like a really simple thing to do, but you'll be surprised at how many times the interviewer will be like, oh, no, actually, that's not what we're trying to solve here. What we actually want as the output here is this. So that's always a really good thing to clarify before you even move on to think about how to solve it, right? The next step is match. And this is one of the shorter steps, but this basically boils down to, hey, based on all these different questions that I have practiced, does this match any common patterns that we've done before? So which data structures and techniques can we actually use to simplify this problem? Can we use hash tables so that it makes lookup easier, so we save on time complexity? Can we actually use stacks and queues? Should we use depth first search? Should we use breadth first search? So this is the part where you're trying to think about all the tools you have and then actually use it to solve the problems. And finally, the most important phase, I think, is the plan phase. So it's a lot easier to modify a plan than it is to write modify code, right? I don't know about you all, but something that used to happen to me a lot is I'd write all this code on the whiteboard or, on some kind of online coding editor. And then I try to change it and things would get really messy. I'm trying to draw arrows here. I'm trying to delete code here, add code here. And in the end, I get so confused about what I'm even trying to do that things are so messy and I don't even know how to get it back to the working stage. Has anybody been in that situation before or is that just me? I don't know why that always used to happen to me. I would just get so nervous. I'm like, I have to get this done. I'm just trying to modify it here and here and here. And then I get so into my own head that I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Does that happen to anybody? I want to look here. Okay, good. Some people have confirmed that it's not just me. So it's way easier to fix a plan in words. If you're actually writing on comment about what you're trying to do, it's way easier to fix that than it is to fix code, right? Because code, you're probably trying to write shorthanded. You're trying to make variables really short named, and it's very hard to fix that when you don't understand what you're thinking anymore. So it's a lot easier to modify a plan than it is to modify actual code. And the great thing about planning is you can help catch potential bugs before you actually start to write the code, right? So if you have a plan, you could actually run through the plan with an input and see what output that plan would produce. So you catch bugs before you actually start writing the code. Now it makes your code a lot easier to write if you're just translating a plan, basically English words, into actual code. A lot of times people also like to use diagrams or pseudocode to actually say, okay, this is how I'm going to solve the problem. So maybe you're working with a binary tree question, for example. You're drawing arrows on tree nodes to say, okay, we're going to iterate through this node and then this node. And that just makes it a lot easier for the interviewer to understand what you're trying to do, right? Because the interviewer also has to understand the code you write. And if you tell them in English what you're trying to write, it makes it a lot easier for them to say, oh, well, it might not work here because of this, versus you writing code and then the interviewer trying to figure out what your code is doing and then trying to tell you what's wrong with your code. So planning, I think, is a really, really important step. And the last thing is always run through your approach with test cases just to make sure it works. The fourth part, which hopefully at this point is pretty easy because you already have a very solid plan, is actually translate that plan into code, right? You already know exactly what to do. You iterate through the array. You see if each element has been seen before, and then you add it to some list if it hasn't been seen before. Translating that into code becomes a lot easier once you have a solid plan. So hopefully, by the time you get to this implement phase, things are pretty straightforward. The second to last step is once you write down that code, another common mistake I've seen people make is they say they're going to write code for something, and then when they actually write the code, it doesn't match their exact plan because they kind of forgot about what their plan was and what they were trying to do. So another really important thing to do is after you write the code, actually run through your code with an example input and see if it produces the right output. So actually tracing the code and be like, okay, at this stage, this variable is this number. As we're going through the for loop, it turns into here. And finally, the output becomes this. So actually reviewing your code and making sure that everything works as you expect it to is very important. And this really helps you catch like a lot of these edge cases that people don't end up catching if they're just like, okay, here's my code. I'm done with it. And the very last step is to evaluate. So at this point, hopefully you've already done most of the work and you're just like, okay, this is my solution. It takes up this much space and the runtime is this. And then you kind of discuss, okay, because we went with this approach, we sacrificed space for time, or because we went with this approach, we sacrificed space, time for space. So those, in a very brief gist, was the umpire method. Ooh, take a breath. What do y'all think? Makes sense? Doesn't make sense? A lot? Solid, but a lot. Makes sense. Okay, I'm glad it makes sense because I went through that really quickly. And if it didn't make sense and you're like, that was a lot, how is anybody supposed to remember that? Just remember that we're going to be doing this for 12 weeks, so it's totally okay. And I think the important thing is people get really bogged down in these steps, but hopefully by the end of the 12 weeks, you'll get so good at it that you're going to be able to breeze through it. Because the important thing is you still have to come up with a working solution at the end of like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, right? So going through the steps, but going through them quickly is going to be very, very important. Are you supposed to be communicating during all stages, or can you maybe give a break between a couple of these stages? Yeah, it's a good question. I think the most important part in the interview is to always communicate with the interviewer, right? So it should be a two-way conversation. Don't think of it as the interviewer giving you a test and you having to just solve the problem without their help. So for example, I think the part that requires the most communication is the understand step. So actually talking to the interviewer, being like, okay, is this what we expect? Is this the expected input and output? And then the other really important part is you do kind of want to talk through the match phase, being like, oh, okay, this is kind of like a binary tree problem. So I'm thinking through whether I want to do a breadth first search or a depth first search. If I do a breadth first search, these are the advantages. If I do a depth first search, these are the advantages. And since the problem we're solving is trying to find, is trying to look at every leaf before every parent, this is the approach I want to go with. And then in the plan phase, it's really important to communicate with the interviewer to be like, oh, okay, this is my plan. Does this seem like a solid plan to you? Should I implement the solution for this? Or should we work on some edge cases? Because if your interviewer is good, and I mean, there are a lot of bad interviewers out there, but if you have a good interviewer, they're going to try to help you, point you in the right direction, right? They don't want you to start down a rabbit hole and code the wrong solution. So they'll be like, oh, have you thought about this specific case? Would that work with your plan? And that's the place where you could be like, oh, okay, well, with my plan, this particular input does not give the right output. So let's fix that. So that's how you could start fixing your plan before you even start writing code. So I think communication with your interviewer throughout the whole process is very important. Does it matter how fast you solve the problem? It definitely does matter. I mean, someone who was able to solve the problem without a lot of guidance and a lot of hints is definitely going to fare better than someone who, took the whole time and had to get a lot of hints. The other thing is the less hints you can get from the interviewer, the better. So a lot of times it's not productive for us as interviewers to say, oh, okay, we're just going to be stuck with you for 30 minutes, right? So we will try to give you as many hints to be like, oh, have you thought about, maybe using the breadth first search approach? And as it's not good to get many hints from the interviewer, but it's okay to get some hints. But the less hints you get, the better. Should we focus on solving LeetCode problems over HackerRank? I honestly never tried HackerRank, so I'm not sure. The reason I use LeetCode is because it's really easy to filter by the most popular questions. So I just solve like the most top hash map questions, the top linked list questions, like 3 in the medium category, 3 in the easy category, 3 in the hard category, stuff like that. So that's the only reason I use LeetCode. I haven't tried HackerRank actually. Is it okay to say the time and space complexity of an approach in the plan stage before the evaluate stage? Yes, in fact, you should talk about the space and time complexity of your approach before you even start coding it. So you come up with the plan, And then the idea is that you're like, oh, okay, you know, this plan takes up this much space, has this runtime complexity. Should we go ahead and code up this plan, or, you know, should we try to come up with a more efficient plan? Always communicate with the interviewer on what they want to see, because sometimes, you know, they don't even care about the less efficient solution. They want to see you implement a more efficient and complicated solution. Sometimes they just want to see you implement any kind of solution. So it's hard to read the interviewer's mind. So it's always a good idea to ask them what they want to see and confirm with them that what you're doing is what they actually find helpful for them. Is it common to have bitwise operations? Yeah, I personally have never gotten a bitwise operation question, and we don't cover bitwise operations in any of our courses. So I want to say it's not very common, but it is a cool concept, and it's cool to see how some problems can be solved so efficiently with bitwise operations. Oh, this is a really good question. Should you use built-in functions like sort? So a lot of times, like Python and Java have all these very useful methods. Should you use them, or should you do your own thing? Again, I think this comes down to asking the interviewer, right? So you could tell the interviewer, oh, well, can we use the sort method to sort the array before we do more things? And their interviewer would be like, yeah, it's a built-in function. Why don't we just use it? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Sometimes an interviewer would be like, well, let's not use that built-in function. Let's see how to solve this problem without utilizing that. So always ask the interviewer, hey, I think it would be a lot easier if we could use this. Should we go about doing that, or should we try something else? All right, we have about 8 minutes left in class. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of wrap up, and then I'm gonna go back to answering questions. I'm gonna do a little bit of wrap up, send out the survey link, give everybody some time to do the survey, and then I'm gonna go back to answering questions. So if your question hasn't been answered, I'll try to get to it after all this wrap up stuff. So going through umpire questions. The next session, we just talked a lot of abstract stuff, right? So next session, we're actually gonna walk through a problem, this umpire approach. So what does it mean to actually go through each of the steps with a concrete problem, right? We're gonna do a very, hopefully easy problem. So nobody is like, what is this problem asking? And the idea of this walkthrough is just for you to kind of see this thinking approach in action. So the idea isn't for you to learn a new problem. The idea is for you to see this method used in action. And then you're gonna go into your groups and you're gonna try doing it by yourself. So that's what we're gonna be doing in the next section. And now it is time for me to send out a survey.